Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about just all the other games that weren't the, massive marquee games of the Ohio State, Texas, Miami, Notre Dame, those echelon of games. Got into South Carolina, got into Tennessee getting a big win. Bill Belichick's debut did not go the way that he planned it, and a number of other games that defined this weekend, but we got some winners and losers from week one. Definitely will give us a chance to get into some other games that happened around the weekend. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And as has happened pretty much every single time when we get to this part of the year, or really when we get to any part of the year in the 12-team playoff, conferences can be winners and losers going forward. And the ACC, I thought, won in a big way. Even with Clemson's loss, I think that is the least devastating loss maybe of the entire weekend. Maybe Texas outdoes that one just a little bit in terms of losses that don't hurt you at all. But Miami gets a massive win over Notre Dame, one that they absolutely needed and might just secure them as a multi-bid league. Florida State gets an even bigger win over Alabama and gives them a big three. They give Florida State, Miami, and Clemson seem to be the big three teams in that conference. Obviously a long way to go, but that was kind of the thing the ACC was missing. It's Clemson and it's everyone else. Who is going to meet them up at that top level? Seems like Florida State and Miami are more than happy to at least get close to that top level and maybe be the other team going to the CFP from this conference. The other part of this is Georgia Tech gets a massive win over Colorado. Obviously, the UNC loss doesn't help them against TCU, but you get a massive win over a Colorado team that I think is going to be able to put up a couple of wins in the Big 12. You might have a whole lot easier of an argument at the end of the year over the Big 12. I think you already have that argument kind of won in a lot of respects, but obviously that is going to be something that's relatively important down the stretch. Whether it should be as important as it is, that's a debate for another day. But the ACC won in the big way this season, or this weekend. I think Clemson's loss doesn't help. I also think Clemson was the team that you said they could lose this weekend and bounce back and still be in the CFP. I think we thought Miami probably had to get a win to feel fully confident in them. Florida State didn't have to get a win, but definitely if they got a win, they're fully back in the CFP conversation now. So the ACC did a whole lot of help to themselves this past weekend, and I think they're going to be the multi-bid league, which leaves the Big 12 probably to be a one-bid league. It was not a perfect week from the Big 12. TCU, Utah kind of saved the day just a little bit for this conference. Texas Tech had a dominating win over a not a good opponent, but Arizona State, Kansas State struggled against relative layups. Now, Arizona State was able to build a relative good lead and didn't necessarily have to stress too much at the end of this game, but it wasn't all that pretty against Northern Arizona. Kansas State let North Dakota hang around for just a little bit too long. I said Iowa State was going to be the team that struggled coming back from Dublin. I was wrong. It was the other team. It was the Wildcats that were just a little bit all over the place. Obviously, Colorado loses. Baylor goes down. It was a tough week for the Big 12. It definitely put them in the you are going to be a one-bid league conversation. Now, maybe TCU and Utah, or maybe Arizona State and Utah can totally separate from everyone. Maybe Iowa State can win this weekend against Iowa and give them another leg up, but it's not going to be pretty. I think this conference is going to be a little bit all over the place like it was last year, and I think if they didn't get these out-of-conference games, it was going to be a really, really tough battle to get more than one team in the CFP. Now that Colorado's lost, now that Baylor's lost, you're in a tough spot. So we'll see what happens going forward. Obviously, a lot that's still in place. I think Iowa State, TCU, Arizona State, Utah still look very good to me. Texas Tech, still a very dangerous team, but it wasn't the weekend that the Big 12 wanted. I can promise you that. A winner was freshman quarterbacks, and it was not what I expected. Now, with Bryce Underwood, I did expect him to play good football against New Mexico. I can promise you that. He looked really good. He looked like the quarterback that everyone made him out to be. Now, this weekend is going to tell you a whole lot more about what he does against Oklahoma, but incredible, incredible football player and a guy that physically fits everything, a single thing you want him to do. Whether it's run the football, he can throw the ball about a million miles, has incredible touch. He's going to be a really good quarterback. I can promise you that. He already is a very good quarterback, but he might be downright special for Michigan going forward. Jaren Kawe Sagopulatele, incredible game against Oregon State. That guy puts the ball exactly where he wants to every time. An incredible, incredible quarterback, and a guy that obviously with the lefty reminds a lot of people of Tua. He might have more raw arm talent than Tua does. An incredible player that absolutely can sling the ball around the yard. Obviously, they're going to maybe not be the team that Michigan's going to be at the end of the year, but Cal's got a dude. There's no two ways about that. Saw way too many tweets talking about him transferring at the end of the year. let Cal enjoy something. Let them have a good time with this quarterback. And frankly, he chose Cal. He transferred to Cal from Oregon. So I think he's going to stick around. Incredible player, and he dominated Oregon State this past weekend. And then Malik Washington, wanted to give him some love over at Maryland. Really good game against FIU, obviously, or FAU, excuse me. Obviously, he should have a good game against FAU, but at the end of the day, it does look like Maryland might have their quarterback of the future going forward. Really fun to watch all three of those guys go to work. And then you have some redshirt guys like Julian Say and Dylan Lonergan and a couple other guys that played some really good football. And I know for a fact, I'm going to call him JKS so I just don't butcher his name anymore. But JKS, going to be an incredible player for Cal going forward. Cannot wait to watch that team. And it was a team that I wasn't all that excited to watch going into the season, with all due respect. And then Bryce Underwood. Can't wait to see what this weekend holds. He's a very, very special athlete and a guy that, if they win this weekend, things get really interesting for that Michigan team in a hurry. Maybe they're the team going to the CFP from the Big Ten after that Big Three, as we call it up there in the Big Ten. The loser is the guys that had to wait their turn or waited their turn. It's always a great thing. I don't necessarily want to poo-poo people waiting their turn, because it is what I want people to do. I want people to sit and stay at the same place and get more comfortable and then get their chance to shine. Doesn't change that Arch Manning and Ty Simpson were not great this weekend, and it put them in a not great spotlight in a lot of respects, particularly Arch Manning for obvious reasons. But the reality is, it was not pretty from these two guys. It doesn't kill anyone. I think both of them are going to be fine. I'm a little bit more worried about Ty Simpson, not because I think he's a terrible player, frankly because I think his coach might need to do some things to keep his job. But that's a totally different conversation for a different day. They'll be fine. Especially Arch Manning, both of them will be totally fine. They went on the road in tough road environments. They're going to be okay. It just wasn't all that pretty from guys that waited for that moment for quite some time and didn't go the way that they wanted it to. But I'm sure they'll find their footing. I'm sure they won't be losers next week, hopefully, and they'll be able to bounce back and at least keep their feet under them just a little bit. New defensive coordinators dominated this weekend. And we'll start with Matt Patricia because that was probably the most obvious of the bunch. Incredible job against an offense that is not easy to defend. And that's something we'll talk about going forward with Steve Sarkisian in that offense. Some guys are catching on, especially the elite defensive coordinators. We saw it with Kirby. We saw it with Jim Knowles last year at the end of the year with Ohio State. And we saw it this past weekend. There are some relatively troubling things around that. But overall, he did an incredible job getting his defense ready. Obviously, he has an elite group of guys, but absolutely got them ready for everything that they were going to face on Saturday. That Ohio State defense is not going to skip a beat. They might be better than last year, as crazy as that sounds. Corey Heatherman down at Miami did an incredible job with that team that was a really, really hard lift. I think they have incredible, incredible players around that group. I also think putting together a back end all from transfers is an absolute nightmare. And they're playing really good football back there. Had one big-time mistake, obviously, but they are a very, very good team, and they're absolutely going to do some incredible things this year, especially because of that defense. Obviously, Jim Knowles is rolling over there at Penn State. They played an incredible game against Nevada. Obviously, it's Nevada, but a lot of things looked really clean for that Penn State football team. Tom Allen did a great job against LSU at Clemson. A couple of bad moments, but overall, really good defense down there. And then, just to give some love to Blake Baker one more time, he's in year 2, but incredible job getting that team the way that they need to be, and definitely the Blake Baker defense that LSU fans have been waiting for, at least last season. The loser is an understanding of the rules. I have no earthly idea what a catch is, guys, and I don't think anyone does. I think the guys with stripes on the field don't know what a catch is, if I'm being totally honest, because there were 3 big plays this weekend that I found were relatively similar. Obviously, there are differences. Obviously, there are certain things that apply to some that don't apply to others. But the Parker Livingstone catch that got Texas on the board late in that game, the Barry and Brown catch that you're seeing right there at the goal line, right on the corner, and then the Nick Harbor catch in the corner of the end zone that he lost on the way down. All of those were relatively similar to me. Obviously, Parker Livingstone ended up with the ball in his hands. That's a little bit different, and he was in the field of play, which makes it a little bit less complicated. But all those guys went down, had good control, maybe not fully firm control, went to the ground, lost it for a second, and then were able to regain it. How is one of those a catch and the other 2 aren't? I think all 3 are a catch. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying that the rest were totally right with Barry and Brown and Nick Harbor. I think they were wrong with those 2 and right with Parker Livingstone, because how can you tell me that Barry and Brown catch a ball, have full control, touch the pylon, and then lose it as he's going to the ground and it not be a catch. I get the rule is very complex. I get the rule is weird. But when you have Mike Pereira coming on TV and saying, I've talked to everyone around the industry and everyone said that's a touchdown, you have a problem. You're not officiating this game the same across the board. It's been a problem for a really long time, especially with this particular rule. I don't know what a catch is. I don't think anyone knows what a catch is, and I think we're still trying to figure that out. It's a nightmare, and it's one of those things that is going to change the outcome of a football game. It almost changed the outcome of the LSU game. If Clemson comes down and scores in that moment, it's a tie game, and Clemson has all the momentum all of a sudden. We got to figure it out. One way or another, we have to figure it out. I don't understand how someone can catch the ball, have firm control, and then be fully out of bounds, and then they hit a camera or something crazy, and the ball bounces out, and it's not a catch anymore. We have to find a way to move forward with this. I don't get it. All three of those catches should have been catches, and only Parker Livingstone's was. I don't understand it. It's not remotely even across the board, and it's not even that these refs were from different conferences. When you talk about the LSU game as well as the Texas game, I believe both were SEC crews. So it's not even a conference thing. It's just a crew by crew thing, what a catch is, and that is a massive problem going forward. The winner was all of us. Mainly college football is back. That's the biggest thing. We are back in full swing. Everything is getting crazy. We have massive overreactions one way or the other. Arch Manning is terrible at football. I don't know if you've heard. And also Alabama is dead. And all this great stuff is happening once again because college football is officially back in our lives. It was a week that was hyped up to be the best week one of all time. And I think it lived up to the hype. As crazy as that sounds, every big game was down to the wire, was very close. We got a massive upset with Florida State over Bama. We got some incredible games that went down a little bit to the wire with some of these quote-unquote layup games for these big-time teams. College football is all the way back. That's the important part. We got an incredible weekend that lived up to every bit of the hype that it had going in. Obviously, the Ohio State-Texas game didn't give us the fireworks we wanted, but it was close late, and it had plenty of stuff to talk about afterwards. There's no doubt about that. So we are the biggest winners of this entire weekend because we got the best sport in the history of the world back in our lives. I am a big-time loser of this past weekend. I won't lie to you. I was more wrong this weekend than I think I've ever been in my entire life around college football, and I loved every second of it. Because the reality is, when I am totally wrong, not saying that I am a savant of this sport, but it means this sport is all over the place, and it really is this year. It's going to be the rest of the season. I picked Texas because I thought Arch would be a little bit ahead of Julian Sayin. Was wrong about that. I picked Clemson because I was a little bit worried about the LSU defense. Was wrong about that. I picked Notre Dame because I was a little bit worried about Miami's ability to stop the run. Ridiculous. And I picked Alabama because Alabama against Florida State. Nope. Florida State gets a big-time win. I was all types of wrong this past weekend, and it was so much fun to watch. Every single game was incredible. Every single moment was awesome. There were so many things to talk about out of this weekend. More than anything, if I'm going to lose that way every single weekend, if I'm going to be that wrong on my picks, but it's going to roll out that way, more than fine. I'll take a losing record this year on my picks if it means we're getting week after week of that level of football. Was incredible. Was a little bit sloppy. It is week one. There's going to be a little bit of slop, but it was college football, and it was perfect in every sense. Even though I did not have my best week in terms of picking games, it was awesome to watch. Loved every second of it, and we're fully back. We got college football fully back in our lives, and we will get ready for a week 2 on Friday, I believe. We'll release that video picking all of the games. Got a huge game on Friday night with James Madison against Louisville. We'll get into all of it. I promise you that. Apologies again for a little bit of a delay. Jury duty did me in this week, but we will figure it out. We'll go forward and probably start doing Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday shows. We'll figure that out on the back end of week 2, but we'll see you on Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday to break down an incredible, underrated week 2 slate, and we'll talk about that more on Friday. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment. It means the world to me, helps me out a ton. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on Friday to break down a really fun week 2.